June 1940. France has fallen. German troops march beneath the Arc de Triomphe, and the swastika hangs over Paris. Across the Channel, 300,000 British soldiers have escaped from Dunkirk, tired, shaken, and forced to abandon nearly all their equipment as they fled the beaches. Only 21 miles of grey water now separate Britain from the most formidable military machine Europe has ever seen. Britain stands alone. Its army depleted, its allies defeated, its new Prime Minister offering nothing but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. The odds appear overwhelming, the stakes, civilization itself. This is the story of the year Britain refused to surrender. The road to disaster. To understand how Britain reached this moment, we look back to September 1939. When Hitler invaded Poland, Britain and France declared war. The British Expeditionary Force crossed to France expecting a conflict resembling the last war, entrenched, grinding, slow. They were wrong. In May 1940, Germany launched Blitzkrieg, fast coordinated attacks of tanks, aircraft, and mobile infantry. While the French focused on their defensive Maginot Line, German panzer divisions smashed through the Ardennes, territory thought too dense for armor. Within days, they were racing toward the Channel, cutting off British, French, and Belgian forces. Trapped around Dunkirk, more than 400,000 Allied troops faced annihilation. Operation Dynamo saved many of them, but at enormous cost. Equipment was abandoned, casualties mounted, and although over 300,000 men were rescued, Churchill reminded the nation, wars are not won by evacuations. 18 days after Dunkirk, France surrendered. Hitler chose the same railway carriage in which Germany had signed its surrender in 1918 to accept France's defeat. Britain's last continental ally was gone. Britain prepares. In London, a bitter debate emerged. Some in government argued that peace with Hitler might be Britain's only chance of survival. Churchill rejected the idea outright. On 18 June, he told the nation that the Battle of Britain was about to begin, and that future generations might remember the months ahead as Britain's finest hour. The country prepared for invasion. Beaches were fortified, road signs removed, and the local defense volunteers formed, later the Home Guard. Many of these volunteers drilled with improvised weapons, determined to resist if Germany landed on British soil. Yet Britain possessed one critical advantage: its air defense system. Radar stations, ground observers, and fighter command worked together to detect and intercept German aircraft. Young pilots, many barely out of school, flew Spitfires and Hurricanes in what would become the decisive struggle of the summer. Across the Channel, Hitler planned Operation Sea Lion, his invasion of Britain. But first, the Luftwaffe needed to destroy the RAF. Hermann Göring promised it could be done swiftly.
The Battle of Britain. On 10 July 1940, the Luftwaffe began its assault, initially targeting shipping in the Channel. Through July and early August, the attacks escalated towards airfields, radar installations, and aircraft factories. Fighter command was stretched to its limit. Pilots flew multiple sorties a day, exhausted and often outnumbered. New recruits arrived with minimal training and faced combat within days. But Britain was not alone in the skies. Pilots from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Canada, New Zealand, and other nations joined the fight. The Polish 303 Squadron became one of the highest scoring of the entire battle, driven by the loss of their homeland and an unmatched determination to strike back. In late August, the RAF was close to breaking. Then came a turning point. German bombers accidentally dropped bombs on London. Churchill ordered retaliation on Berlin. Hitler, furious, shifted the Luftwaffe's focus to British cities. The respite allowed Fighter Command to repair airfields, rotate pilots, and regain strength. On 15 September, in one of the battle's decisive days, the RAF repelled 2 massive raids on London, destroying dozens of German aircraft. 2 days later, Hitler postponed the invasion indefinitely. Britain had held firm. Churchill spoke the words that entered history: "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The Blitz. Yet victory in the air did not end the danger. On 7 September 1940, the Luftwaffe launched a devastating daylight attack on London, killing hundreds. For 57 consecutive nights, the capital was bombed. Millions sheltered in underground stations, back garden shelters, and church crypts. Working-class districts, especially in the East End, suffered terribly. Even Buckingham Palace was hit. Other cities faced similar horrors. Coventry was devastated in a single night, its cathedral destroyed. Birmingham, Liverpool, Hull, Plymouth, and many more came under repeated attack. By the spring of 1941, more than 43,000 civilians had died. Yet morale did not collapse. Firefighters battled through infernos, volunteers cleared rubble, factories resumed production at dawn. Signs reading "business as usual" appeared across the ruins. Observers like George Orwell noted that despite everything, the public's determination seemed only to strengthen. Aircraft production actually increased during the Blitz. Women entered factories in vast numbers, keeping the nation's war machine running while the raids continued overhead. In May 1941, the Luftwaffe launched its final major assault on London. Soon afterward, German attention shifted eastward. Hitler had a new objective: the invasion of the Soviet Union. The Blitz was over. Britain had endured. Alone, but not defeated. Despite the rhetoric of isolation, Britain was not entirely alone. In the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt sought ways to support Britain without breaking American neutrality. Old destroyers were transferred to the Royal Navy, and the Lend-Lease program provided vast quantities of food, weapons, and raw materials. The Commonwealth also rallied. Canadians crossed the Atlantic to join the Army and Air Force. Indian divisions deployed across the Middle East. Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, and many others took up the fight. Britain stood geographically isolated but supported by a global network. The war expanded. In North Africa and the Mediterranean, British and Commonwealth forces battled Axis armies. Then in June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, instantly transforming the strategic landscape. Churchill, despite his deep suspicion of communism, welcomed the new ally. 6 months later, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States fully into the war. Hitler declared war on America soon afterward. Britain was no longer alone. Churchill later reflected that the long months of solitary resistance had been endured and that Britain's survival helped ensure victory. Aftermath and impact. The year 1940 stands as both Britain's darkest and finest hour. The nation suffered devastating losses, tens of thousands of civilians killed, entire districts flattened, historic buildings reduced to rubble. 544 RAF pilots died in the Battle of Britain. Yet Britain's refusal to surrender changed the course of the war.
It ensured a democratic foothold remained in Europe. It preserved a base for the eventual liberation of the continent, and it proved that Hitler's seemingly unstoppable advance could indeed be halted. The men of fighter command, the few, became symbols of courage. Memorials now overlook the channel they defended, reminders of the extraordinary bravery that preserved Britain's freedom. Churchill's leadership during this period remains a benchmark for crisis leadership, resolute, candid, and profoundly aware of the stakes. His words gave a besieged nation strength when it seemed close to defeat. Conclusion. In the summer of 1940, the future of Europe hung by a thread. That thread was held by a small band of young pilots, by a population that endured nightly terror, and by a government determined never to capitulate. Britain stood alone, but in standing, it proved that tyranny could be resisted, and that courage, however outmatched, can prevail. George Orwell captured the mood of the time when he wrote, "It is impossible to see how we can win, yet I believe we shall win." He was right,